Hey up everyone and welcome. Today we're going to be making one of my favourite flowers to make. But first of all, let's take care of business. Hit those subscribe and like buttons to make sure you don't miss out on any future videos that I make. Who doesn't love a sunflower? It always makes me smile, especially when I pair them with lavender. It always makes me think of a family vacation that we went on in Provence. Fields of lavender, fields of sunflowers. Always brings a smile to my face. When I'm making the sunflowers, I make them in various sizes. The smaller ones I use to decorate gifts I give to people. Just gives a personal touch. And also I make headbands. This is my granddaughter and she definitely knows how to rock this headband. Makes everybody smile when they see it. These are the materials and the tools that we're going to be using today. And I hope you stay to the end of the video because I'll be showing you how I make the headbands and just the leaf connection that I do on the back of the headbands and the gifts. I usually do some shading on my sunflowers. It just gives them that bit of depth in there, but it's personal preference. If you don't want to do the shading, then don't do the shading. But these are some options for you. Personally, I use the oil pastels. I find that they blend together really nicely and I can smudge the colours in there, or you could use cheap eyeshadows from Dollar Tree or Walmart. I always test out the shading that I'm going to be doing on a scrap piece of felt just so that I can see how it's going to look. Like I say, I usually use the oil pastels to do my shading. On this I'm using a red and like a yellowy orangey coloured and blend the two together. It just gives a bit of depth to that yellow felt. Once I'm happy with all the shading, I'll turn over the pieces of felt and just dab off any excess colouring. And just to make sure that it's all blended in there nicely. I'm going to start with the centre of the sunflower, and this is going to be your usual fringing, folding over the felt in half, gluing down the sides there, and then we're just going to do the fringing on both the dark brown and the light brown. The dark brown is going to be the centre of the sunflower and the lighter brown is going to be a circle around that middle centre. When I'm winding the centres of the sunflower, I use a scrap piece of wire just to hold everything in place, just so it keeps everything steady, and I make sure I get a good wind on there, a good tight wind. Like I say, we're just going to do the dark brown for the centrepiece. You can make these centerpieces as big as you want to. I usually use all of the dark brown, and then I attach the lighter brown where I finished with the dark brown, just so it leads on from each other. And then I usually go around the centerpiece, so I have 2 rows of the light brown going around, then I just snip off the excess. But like I say, however much you want to make, it's up to you. And with the centerpiece done, now it's time to put the petals in place. When I'm putting the petals in place, I use this little pentagram just to guide me where I'm going to put these 5 individual petals. These are going to be my spaces so that when I put the circle of petals in place, I know where to place them. I make a little bunny's ear shape and I just put one petal on each of those lines. So I'm going to end up with 5 of these individual petals in a pentagram shape. The purpose of spacing out these individual petals gives me a guideline where I want the other petals to go. My intention is to get 3 more petals in between those individual petals. But you'll see as the video goes on, it'll make more sense for you. Okay, that's all the 5 individual petals in place. This is how it should look like underneath. And now I'm going to take off that spare piece of wire that I started at the beginning and I'm going to replace it with another piece of wire, and I'm going to make a tabletop for the flower to sit on. I do that by making a coil at the top of the wire. Just bend it round into a circle. Then fold it over and it makes a tabletop sort of thing for the flower to sit on. And I glue that in place. Now it's time to start placing the circle of petals in place. I do them 1 layer at a time, and like I say, the intention is to get 3 petals in between those 5 individual petals. When you glue this first circle in place, so if you look at the flower, you will be able to see that sometimes one of the petals sits in between the 2 individual petals, or 2 petals sit in between the 2 individual petals. You'll see what I mean now. Like there, I've got 2 petals sitting in between, there I've got 1 petal. If I have 1 petal in between the individual petals, I will glue it in the middle, leaving a space either side of it. If I have 2 petals like this now, I'm going to glue it at the sides of the space. So I'm going to butt them up against those individual petals that we put down in the first place, leaving a gap in between those 2 petals. Again, I've got 2 petals in this space, so I'm going to put them up against the individual petals that we put in the first place, leaving a gap in between the 2 of them. The single petal here will go in between those 2 petals that we put in before, right in the middle, so leaving space either side of it. And lastly, for this layer, we've got 2 petals to put in there, leaving a gap in between the 2 of them. And the second layer of petals that we're going to be putting on next, you do have to shimmy the petals in place, just to fill in those gaps that we've left there. Sometimes it looks like there isn't a space, but believe me, just shimmy the petal in there. If you look at the petal from underneath, you'll be able to tell where you put those original petals. So you just want to put 1 in between the 2 that we placed on that first layer. Just shimmy the petal on up there. Now we're going to go either side of that one. Shimmying those petals into place. Like I say, the intention is to get 3 petals in between those 5 that we put on in the first place. When you finish positioning all this second layer, you're going to have 1 petal left over. Now this petal can be used to fill in a gap anywhere that you might have on the flower, or you can just snip it off and you don't need to use it. But just take a look around your flower, see if there's anywhere that you think there is a little bit of a gap. Like just there, we could do another one in there. So just snip off the flower, and the same way that we position those first 5 flowers, just add the glue, do a little bunny ear in there and shimmy it on inside those other petals. And it should fit in snugly there. And that's the top of the sunflower completed. If you feel that the shading is a little bit too much, you can go in and just smudge the shading. But I like the shading on the sunflower, it just gives it that little bit of depth. Next we're on to the base of the sunflower, the sepal of the sunflower. Now the sunflower itself and the base is not flat, so we're going to give it some body down there. We're just going to use some scrap pieces of felt, cutting out some squares of felt, and then we're just going to add it to the bottom of this flower just to give some body, and then the sepal will sit over that. Now that we've added a bit of body to the bottom of the flower, we're going to place the sepal in place. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put some glue to attach it to the base of the flower just to hold it in place. And again, just to give it a bit of depth in there, we're going to glue those little fronds that are sticking out. We're going to put a dab of glue on the end of there, pinch it together and glue it to the base of the flower. Pinching it together like that sort of creates a little rib there and gives some definition and some texture down there. When it comes to the last 2, make sure that you do them at the same time so that you can actually get into them, otherwise it's going to be such a small space for you to get in there, you aren't going to be able to get in there as neatly as you want to. As you can see, just squeezing those leaves together at the end of the sepal, it just gives a bit of texture down there, it makes it just a little bit more realistic. Now we have it. Now I have a trick for you if you have any loose bits of glue that are just dangling around there. Sometimes you get these cobweb things. I always use my embossing tool. I use this for everything. I use it in my epoxy projects. I use it in my felt projects. It just burns away any cobwebs of glue that you may have sitting around your flower. Just cleans them up nicely. And if you want to, you can add a leaf to the sunflower. I usually add leaves separately in my bouquets because they usually tend to get hidden, so I usually position them in the bouquet separately. But if you want to, you can just add a leaf to the stem, position it where you want it to be, so it's just peeking out behind, and then just attach it with some floral tape. The pattern for the flowers is available at my website aup.creations.com. If you're cutting with a Cricut or a silhouette, obviously you'll be able to adjust the size of the sunflower as you want to, but I have included 2 PDFs, one with a 5-inch diameter cut and one with a 3-inch diameter cut, so that you can cut them in 2 different sizes. For the headband and the gift, decoration, I usually use a 3-inch diameter one, and I don't do the tabletop wire because I don't want any wires in there. I don't want any wires in there that are going to be on the headband. I need to keep those babies' heads nice and safe, so I never use wire there, and I always back it with a nice soft piece of felt. I didn't show you previously what I do with the leaves. I either use the pinking shears or I use scallop shears. These are 3mm scallop shears, and it just gives a nice zigzag edge to the leaves. You can leave them as is, but I've left them straight in the patterns because crickets and silhouettes take forever to do those zigzags, and it's a lot easier for you just to add them at the end. When I'm putting a flower onto a headband, I always make sure that I back it with some soft felt, and I always glue at the top and the bottom there of the leaf so that the headband itself can move between the flower and the leaves. That's how it would look like if it was on a headband, but today I'm just going to glue the leaves onto the back of the flower and make it for a gift. Well, thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and also the pattern is available on our website, ayupduckcreations.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, ayupduckcreations, and I'll speak to you again later.